Hey, I'm Butch Walker and welcome to Ruby Red Productions. The first time that I ever found a piece of Line 6 gear was at my studio in Atlanta, and somebody had brought in one of the little beans, the little red pod. You know, before that, there really wasn't that many great portable, let's call them a headphone amp is what I was originally thinking it was. You know, and then we would plug it into the board and get pretty keepable guitar sounds out of it. Then they came out with the Pod Pro, I think it was called. So I had a red one and a black one, which was the bass one and the guitar one. And the bass one I used religiously on tons of records. And then the Pod Pro for guitar, we used it all the time too, because once it was in the rack, it was patchable and we could run guitars through it, keyboards through it. And then I spoke to the Line 6 folks and they hooked me up with this head they had just come out with for guitar called a Veta. And I remember I used the Veta for I think I used it for like 2 tours on the road, because it was awesome to be able to program any amp sound into it. I remember using and having a nice little run with those amps. I hadn't really seen or messed around with any hardware for years after that, because I just went down into my hole as producing and just never really came up for air for gear. And then started seeing stuff via YouTube of this new thing they had called the Helix. You know, I'd go from one video to the next and see people making them sound pretty good. And I was like, I bet if I had one of those, I could probably get a lot of use out of it and make it sound really good. And it'd be a fun little Swiss Army knife in the studio, because in the studio, we don't have a giant room here. So it's like, I don't have 15 guitar amps here, nor do I want that. So I have a couple of my favorites that can get just about everything, but there's a few times where it calls for, you know, a old Mesa Boogie, and I know that amp well, but I don't have one anymore. So it was cool to dive into it and see that actually a lot of the sounds it had in it were pretty spot on or close enough to the originals that I could get a good feeling out of it when I was playing through it. And that was mostly it, is can I get that feeling when I play through something, that touch and response and that feeling of when I've got one mic'd up. And yeah, I think the answer is yes. I mean, they really kind of nailed it, and I use a lot of the impulse responses, even ones built in, which sound really great too. I think ease of use is very important, because I don't have a lot of patience in the studio. Matter of fact, I have 0 patience. So it's I know where everything is. I want to grab it, plug it in. I know what I'm looking for, and I can usually dial it in 5 seconds. And if that sound is not working, then I need to move on to another solution. Being that I got to think about getting the drums cut and think about the singer and the vocals and their patience level in the next room and blah, blah, blah. I want to make sure that I can get things dialed in pretty quickly and not have to read a manual or be a scientist to do it. And I spent an hour with it, after I got it. And then a day later, I was putting it on people's records. Nobody said, hey, is that a real amp? No one ever even asked, I don't think anybody ever would, because if it sounds good, it sounds good.